Good morning, Lovaii, and welcome to New York.
Well, thank you so much.
It's great to have you here. We've been talking a lot about these issues concerning families with cross-border, and it's like more like now it's a norm than an exception that families will have somebody in one country or in another country. Recently, actually, to tell you, I met somebody that kid is a US citizen, but he was born in Singapore and is currently residing in UK. Okay.
Wow.
But because of his parents being a US citizens, he's a US citizen. And a lot of rules will then apply to them. So what are the things that you're seeing in India, in Bangalore and across the country in India amongst people with cross-border families, and what are the needs that they have,
Yeah, so I think that a lot of these issues have sort of cropped up in possibly the last decade. And more and more people from India are definitely going abroad for studies or work and then staying there. Actually going with an intention to come back and then saying, no, halfway through I changed my mind, I want to be there. And also it has sort of coincided with the time of the global financial crisis, which led to governments and the regulatory bodies in each of the countries to say, consumer protection, customer, investor protection is a big thing.
Yeah.
And so therefore they've tried to cover them by saying that if you are offering advice in my country, then you better be licensed, registered there. And unfortunately what happens is that there are not enough people that you can come across who are able to connect with professionals in different countries, because I'm sure you've seen this, we've seen it together, that there are clients who are US citizens, have been in India for many, many years, retaining their citizenship, but they are residents in India.
Yeah.
So there is a tax implication on their investment. There is an implication on currency depending on where their goals are. There is a reporting requirement. They need to worry about estate taxes.
Yes.
Right? It applies in one country, doesn't apply at the moment in India.
Yes.
And when they go to any of the big consulting firms seem to have very clear jurisdictions mapped out.
Right.
So the guy in India will say, no, you can't do this because, I am not allowed to talk about it. The US firm guy will, surprisingly, they're the same firm, but they'll not talk to,
they won't talk with
each other. But we talk, right? So I think the key thing is to be able to find professionals who can sort of jointly have conversations with the client and say, okay, this is your total need. This much will be done in the US, this should be done in India, and this is how the tax implication is, this is how the investment implication is. And then, individual pieces can be handled by each individual advisor.
Yeah.
That's what I see.
Yes, and I think you're absolutely correct. And in that effort, that the launch of the cross-border work that we've now started doing here in terms of purely an advisory unit.
Right.
So we bring in all the component of the advisory units from here. That is our firm, Paresh Shah Partners, as the financial advisory firm. And then we will bring in CPAs who are specialists in understanding FATCA and FBAR and those regulations. And then we have attorneys who will draft the necessary taxation. And all this has become so important. Let me mention to you, just the other day I was sitting down with a person and I brought a specialist CPA into the conversation because he has, so he's a US citizen who's lived many years here. And then he went because his home country was in Africa, so he went back and he started doing some energy work in the energy sector up there. And he did the typical thing that is he set up an LLC here in New York, and then he had a subsidiary in the African country. Now this year, after 8-9 years of effort, he's getting into a position where there's going to be a substantial income. And we were sitting down and just saying that if he took that income into the African entity and then in turn it flowed through into the US entity in New York, he would pay about 55% with federal, state, New York and unincorporated New York City taxes just because he didn't plan it out properly. Now, while we as financial planners are not giving tax advice, I mean, this comes to the forefront about what we do. You really need to look at all these elements. Now, this is about a business, but we see similar things in the families also. So I think this coordination between different aspects of planning has become very important. You and I, we worked on this on the case together of the family where they have the business in India. One of the sons, who's the US citizens, has joined them there, but the other two kids are US citizens and are in the US.
Right.
So how do we plan for a fair and equitable distribution of the wealth? That is one part of it. But second part is, how do we compensate that child who's been helping in expanding and building the business along with the father, So these, I think that there are a lot of issues now which are coming up which did not come up in the past,
Right. Yeah, I think that's very important what you bring up, because what I am seeing is that the Indian citizen who moved to, let's say, the US 30 years ago, 35 years ago, and a lot of them are there. Then they sort of settle down here. Their families have sort of been born here, and they live here, right? And their parents had some ancestral home or some, investment in India where there is an emotional connect with this person. And when you ask them that, what are you planning to do with it? No, it's very emotional. I grew up there. I have memories. That's great. And what about passing it on to your children? Will they come and look after it? No, they have never come to India. They've come once in 10 years. They are not really happy to be there. And that sort of strikes me saying, okay, so if you have an asset in India, you are living outside, you are not likely to go back there. The easiest and the simplest thing to do is to convert that asset to cash, because then it's so much easier to distribute. When I say cash, I mean investments, right? Liquid investments, which can be passed on easily.
Yes.
Because many of these children of this, first generation people who move to the US don't even have an OCI card. They don't have a PAN card. They don't have a bank account. And that in India, many of these things are required. So we find one issue.
Do you still find people with physical stock certificates coming to you?
Oh, that has increased now because because I don't know whether you are aware, but in India, SEBI has now sent out circulars saying, I think the original date was sometime in December, that after that date you cannot trade in physical shares.
Okay.
So which means, let's say A and B are holding shares, and you say, oh, my Demat account is actually B and C. So I want to transfer it, and it's all known parties. So I will do a physical transfer. I don't want to demat it. That's not going to be permitted after the end of this year.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of people are opening their closets and saying, we have physical shares, can you help demat? And in many cases, we realize one of the holders has passed away.
Yes.
So, you have to submit transmission. But it's just, I think, inertia. There's a whole bunch of process and documentation and paperwork to do. So they've said, we'll do it later on one long weekend.
Push it to the, like everything that you, in your mind is not important, you pushed it out, like a lot of people have still not done proper FBAR and FATCA planning, and proper planning of assets. I'm personally finding more and more that, there are two aspects of this, that in this inertia, the opportunities are getting lost. So one of the things that we've come upon often, and both of us see it, one is let's take from the US side. So there is this, as you talked about, the families who are here.
Right.
These assets that are in India, over a period of time, have, I think some of the real estate has appreciated greatly.
Yeah.
But having said that, the rupee has also depreciated.
Right.
So unless a proper judicious approach is taken, in reality, you may be losing wealth, So I'm sure you've come upon that,
Yeah, and I think that, apart from the financial workings that you're doing, like I said, if somebody else in the family is not interested, you will lose that wealth totally because somebody else is going to come encroach it or take it over because nobody has visited that place.
Exactly.
Stuff like that. The other thing that I find happening with people in the US is that they started their work careers in India. They had some investments. They moved here.
Right.
And that investment is sitting there. Or, one of their family members opened a joint account when they were kids. Now they've moved here, but that is continuing. And there again, I see issues of reporting and taxation, which comes up often. We've had a case where somebody had moved to the US about 20 years ago, had some fixed deposits in India, then had property which was rented out, and the thought process with that client was that the rental is only 25,000 rupees a month. So it's, with some little investment, it is below the taxable limit in India. So I had not filed taxes on that in India, had not reported it back in the US. And with your help, we actually got through to a CPA who sat and, made sure returns were filed in India, went through the voluntary disclosure program and got everything regularized. So there are, while people, feel sort of frozen because they have not done this for 15 years, 20 years, we are able to talk together with professionals who can fix this and say, let's find a solution which will give you peace of mind, right? I keep telling people that if the amounts are not significant, really it's not worth the risk of having IRS knocking on your door and saying,
absolutely. But take it from the US side also, and I think this is one area where I think there is the largest amount of wealth that is not being managed properly. And I'm talking about there is this large body of people who have worked here for a while and have moved back to India for some reason or the other. And they may be US citizens, they may be green card holders. So they have monies here sitting in 401k plans. They have money sitting here just in checking accounts. And some of them have the simple thing, it's lying there, I want my child to come in the future and use it for their education. Or I want my child to come and settle down. Now, while those goals are really, really the correct way, it's fine to leave it in dollars, because if you're going to make dollar expenses, don't expose it to currency risk, but let it be here. That is correct, but why is that wealth not being managed? And these are not unsubstantial sums. We've seen accounts and we've seen them together. 300, 500, 900, 1.5 million, these are the sizes of these accounts.
So I have an answer to that question. Why is it not being managed? Because they have not found an advisor they can trust. Because they come to us and say, it's been sitting there, we moved to India 15 years ago or 10 years ago. Therefore, the 401k, whatever the company program was continuing. Are you looking at it? No, not really. Let me try and log in. The password's expired. I see that happening.
And then when the password expired, they have to call and somebody has to text it back to a US number, and they are in that kind of situation. And we see a lot of those kind of accounts there. But then we also see another area which has become like now with our work for families who being able to buy fixed insurance and indexed insurance products in US dollars for global citizens, for citizens of 40 countries. That means people residing and paying taxes in India, in UK, in Australia. We are able to provide them insurance products which can also be used as accumulation vehicle. So here we are really helping now with the planning process, wherein you're taking into account investments, you're taking into account growth of money, and you're taking into account family protection, all in an overall umbrella of financial planning that we as certified financial planners always want to start with, that you take the end goal and you do the whole plan. But some of the key things inside are now pretty easy to add into the practice,
Right, so just run us through a little more detail of this, because, what happens is that typically we tend to think that, insurance is an expensive product, it's a bundled product, we should, keep aside insurance and investment. But I know we have spoken about this, that, it's especially for people who are also, maybe one of the objectives could be that they own assets in India. They are in India, but their child or their beneficiary is in the US, or they want to make sure that the asset sort of and the income passes on to them.
Yes.
So this product can work even in that case.
Exactly. There are two current situations that we are working with, and I'll describe both of them to you. In the first one, what we're talking about is a asset shift. So this is a family that is inside UK, United Kingdom, and the parents have the ability to gift a certain amount of money every year to the children.
Right.
So
the children are in US.
The children are also in UK.
Also in UK.
But the money in UK, the inheritance tax is very, very high.
Right.
So what we were able to do is create a trust-owned life insurance, and it's not as complex as you have to create a trust and a life insurance, but there is a structure available through some of the carriers where there is a trust-owned life insurance which goes outside the estate of the parents. So the parents are gifting money to the children for their own life insurance. These are overfunded products. So these kids are about 25, 30 years old. So over the next 30 years, this money will grow inside. At 65, we can design so that the children can get income from that money, and eventually it's a death benefit that goes to their children. Right. So in that way, parents have transferred wealth, which children are getting to see growth, income in retirement, all the asset protection against lawsuits because of the trust structure, and also out of the parents' estate as well as out of the children's estate when it goes to the grandchildren. Right. So that thing is possible. I mean, these children can then, if their kids come to US to study or anywhere in the world, they can use that money. That is one thing that we are seeing. Second thing we are seeing is that we and I'm sure you come upon this question. Person is living here and has parents back there.
Right.
But even in US, they've become so successful that they have now got more assets and are under the estate tax umbrella.
Right.
So when they inherit all that wealth from their parents, it's going to be yeah. So what we can do is use some of the parents' money to buy insurance on the parent, and it's a lump sum one-time money going inside. And when they pass away, the death benefit either can go to their children in the US through a trust. So again, we protect against estate taxes, or it can go directly to the grandchildren. So in both ways. Then the third aspect of that is, well, if the family does not have that much wealth, but the grandparents do that, then the parents can use some of that money for their children's education. So there is a lot of mix and match that is possible here with the twin structure of a life insurance policy with an investment inside it, and with the growth as well as the protection element of the life insurance.
Yeah, and in fact, coming to insurance, I recall, what was it, about a decade ago when you came to India and there were some annuity plans that you had suggested.
Yeah.
And some of the clients are very thrilled because I think it happened around just before the global financial crisis.
Right.
So there was a guaranteed addition. Are those type of products still available? Or?
Very much.
They're still available.
They're still available. In fact, what we are seeing more and more is but most of these products are for the US citizens residing here, or who just gone back temporarily. If you remember, we were speaking about this to some of the people who are doing back and forth,
right.
because of their associations with, I think it was Intel and Cisco, and
right.
I think one more US, what was that, QuickBooks? I think Intuit,
Yeah.
I think some of those people who have now have income in both the countries,
Right.
but have assets here from older jobs, and they are spent. They're US citizens. Family may still be here, but they're spending a lot of time in India. And when we talk to them about how they can take their old monies, convert it into guaranteed streams of income, those products are still there, and it is essentially so. Some time ago you mentioned peace of mind.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest fear anyone has in retirement is running out of money. And these products ensure that there's a check in the mailbox every time, every month, on and on for the till the end of life.
Right.
And so these products have been very good. In fact, now, as you know, that the first person you introduced me to is at a point where he started receiving income from this product. So it's just been a good mix, you know.
Yeah, and he's still in India, and he's happy that, you know, whatever he's getting in dollars, he multiplies with the exchange rate.
That's another aspect,
right? Yeah. So super, Paresh. It's wonderful having chatted with you here in your wonderful home. And we just figured out, I just at least figured out that, you know, there are aspects that you shared right now, which I was not aware of. And I think that's true of when you're dealing with each new client, you come up with a new situation.
Yes.
I think it's very important for clients to feel comfortable that, yes, we are in a position to connect with the relevant experts. And we are happy to tell clients that, oh, in this area, we don't know. We need to find out, we need to dig deeper and find out. And I think that's the fun of our business, that we get to meet different people in different situations, right?
Exactly. I think that's
and
it's never dry. It's never dry. It's always a new and exciting day with a new challenge, you know. So which you can solve through the basic key elements of financial planning.
Yeah, and I think it's all very important that people trust, right?
Yes.
So they will need to spend time, we'll need to spend time, and then arrive at, you know, a solution which we think is most appropriate.
Yep.
And I think work for the benefit of the client. So really nice chatting with you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Lovaii. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.